Welcome back to the Golf Mix. We are on episode number 4 and we have got a packed show again for you this month. All of this is coming up, but let's start with the live lesson with Ryan. So let's find out what we did with him.
All we need to do really is look at trying to add a bit more consistency, because the way you deliver the club in terms of the path and the face is pretty good on average, but it's a little bit inconsistent. We saw the path jumping around by like 10 degrees. So there's a couple of things we're going to do. Number one, we're going to just try and take a little bit of length out of the swing. So we're going to make it a little bit shorter. Yeah. But then the key thing really is more what we do from this kind of face-on view. The first thing was we kind of had these hips a little bit backing up. The real reason that affects you is because in transition, you kind of shift your weight and your pressure to your lead side, but you kind of do it in this way, where if anything, the upper body gets a little bit...
It's a bit spinny.
Yeah. So you get weight here, but we don't get quite the tilt that we see here. And when you don't get the tilt that you see here, your right shoulder is going to be further from the ground. And when your right shoulder's further from the ground, the only way you can really get the club to the ball is then to start and lengthen the club to that shoulder. That distance has got to be as great as it can be. Yeah. Now what we see with the good players is as they transition, they'll get a lot more of this tilt. The right shoulder gets closer to the ground. And if the right shoulder gets closer to the ground, they don't have to create as great a distance. So they can have shaft lean, which at the moment you can't. Hold your sleeve down, because I'm going to put this on the inside of your arm. That's it. Yeah, you got big arms, ain't you? Big guns there. Need a bigger one. Okay. Right, so that should be on the inside of your arm. So as you start down, okay, if this stays high, okay, you would then release those hands, and that T would start to point more, kind of, you would be a bit more, so bend the arm a little bit, you'd be more here in impact. Yeah. Okay, not that bad, but that's where you'd be. So T points more at your left elbow, okay? Backswing and hold it again. Okay, so see if you can do what you feel is the right thing now. Good, good. Now hold that and now start to rotate the hands. Perfect. See where the T points? Yeah, so it's more tucked in. So you're trying to square that face with the lower part of the arm, whereas you'd be going this way before. You've got to feel from here that your body's driving in this way, and now you square it. There we go. Okay. That's how you put pressure, because as soon as you start to square it with your shoulder, you're never going to get shaft lane. Okay, hit one more, and then we'll actually go back into the bay and hit a few and build the speed. Okay, that's fine. Right, let's jump in, mate. So we've got 3 swings again this month. Last month I was 13 away, so I'm going to see if I can beat 13. I want to see if you can beat me this week. So of these 3 swings, we're going to get a special guest doing one of them. That's Seb, so he's going to do the second swing. But let's start off with the first one, which is Larry, who is, as you can see, left-handed, so we'll call him Larry the lefty. Good setup. I like the setup. As he goes back, a couple of things I'm noticing. Number one, club face tends to stay pretty closed. And you'll notice that as he does that, head moves kind of down towards the ball, and he gets the club a little bit steep at the top. So I'd be looking at changing how he moves his left arm, trying to get to fold a little bit better. That'll get his upper body to move a little better, probably get the face to be a little bit better as well. But generally good golf swing. Because of that, he's a little steep in the early downswing, but he recovers it well, strikes it pretty good. Looks like a pretty athletic golf swing. Bit of speed there. I'm gonna go 9. 12. Okay, 3 away. That's not a bad start. That's not a bad start. So I'm off to a decent start. Let's get Seb in to do the second swing.
That's what Nathan's dealing with here.
Right, we've got Seb in for this one. Seb's going to help me out. So this is Nathan.
Okay.
So we've got 1 swing, driver swing.
Solid setup. Looks like a nice little bit of a hip lean. So I watch it all the way through. Oh, I like it.
I thought, I was thinking it was good.
I quite like the, can I watch it again?
Yeah, yeah.
So I like the little move. Makes it little
Bit
cock.
wolf, yeah.
I like that. Looks good. It's sort of, hands are pretty, a nice bit of extension with left, it's turning. Elbows are good. Sort of that short John Rahm, almost this backswing. And then he unloads. This is what I like, that he's moved through the ball here.
It's good, isn't it? Player.
And then I think player. I think he likes to, I bet he's good in the wind. Let's have a look. Handicap though.
Yeah. Do you know what it is, Joe?
I know what it is.
Yeah, Joe knows what it is.
I was going to go like low, and I've just leaned back. I'm going to go 8.
Nathan plays off 6.
Oh, pretty good, mate.
I'm pretty pleased with
good.
that.
That's only 2
Sorry,
out.
Nathan. I was actually going to say 2 initially, and then I don't know, just something changed.
Right,
That's
2 out.
played.
Seb, thank you, mate. Appreciate that.
Enjoy it.
So pretty good from Seb there. That means between us we're 5 away. Not too bad, looking like we can do better than last time. So now we've got Nicholas with driver. Not sure if this is his home setup or not, but looks pretty impressive. Nice setup. Good takeaway. Top of the backswing looks pretty nice as well. Yeah, all looks pretty good. Gets it a little narrow there. Through the ball, yeah, maybe hands are being pushed out a little bit. Definitely needs to work a little bit on that transition. It kind of narrows a little bit and he gets a little bit stuck and has to sort of throw the hands at the ball. But generally that's a good goal swing. I think he's got to be single figures. Well, actually I can see the ball flight on the screen, that might help. Ooh, looks like a decent shot. Right, he's got to be 4 or 5. I'm going to go 5. Looking like we can do better than last time. 23? Oh my gosh, Nicholas, what are you doing off 23? I am never, ever going to play you in a match. That's ridiculous. I was way out. I can't even do that math in my head. Joe will put the total here. So let me know how you got on. Did you beat me? Did you recognise the handicaps more than I did? That was a terrible effort from me. Every golfer has got a gap in their bag. We've all got irons, and we've all got woods. But how do you fill that void between them? Is it best to go for a hybrid? Is it best to go for a long iron? Well, there's actually a third option. We're going to explore all of that today and give you those answers. So at the end of this section, you're going to know exactly the best style and type of club to fit between your woods and between your irons. So how am I going to conduct this test? Well, I'm going to hit 10 shots with each of these clubs. A hybrid, my actually old 4 iron, and then this, which is, let's say, that third option, we're going to hit that as well. And we're going to use the data through TrackMan to see what the ball flight's like, and then we're going to do that whole test again, hitting each of these clubs 10 times, but on that particular occasion, I'm going to reduce my swing speed down to around about 80 to 85 miles an hour to simulate those golfers out there who do have a slightly slower swing speed, and again, we're going to look at that data. So we're going to start with the 4 iron, which is actually my old 4 iron that's just gone out of my bag. That is the old P7MC. Next up, we'll call it the mystery club. This has actually gone into my golf bag for this year, and I'm really excited about this one. And finally, onto the 4 hybrid, which has got the loft slightly adjusted, taking it just above 22 degrees. That is data all collected. There's a lot there, so I'm going to go back into my office. I'm going to crunch all those numbers, and we're going to run through it together. So what is this club that we've been referencing through this test? Well, it's kind of an iron. But in my bag, I've now got the P770. So it looks like an iron. You know, you put it on a shelf and people would recognize it as an iron. But it's actually quite different to my old iron, and it actually fits between the iron and the hybrid. Why is it different? Well, it's a completely different design. You can see that there's a speed pocket on the bottom. There's actually foam inside this head. You can see there's a little screw there, which is where that foam would go in. It's a very, very different style of club, and it's constructed and built very different. What you can actually do is you look at different styles of irons. Irons that are more geared towards the higher handicapper or more game improvement style, i.e. a 770, 790, maybe even the new Stealth iron, are going to give you more height, more spin, a steeper drop angle if you don't feel that you want to go into hybrids.
Data is in. Let's go through it. Now, I'm not going to run through all the data. What I'll do is I'll put it on the screen, and then if you want to have a look at it, you can just pause the video, take a look and look at as much data as you want. But the 2 numbers that are really important here would be height, so the highest point that ball gets, and then the drop angle, or I think it's called here the land angle. So that's the angle which the ball is coming down into the green. So we really, when we're hitting into greens, whether it's long par 3s, 4s or par 5s, you need to be able to stop the ball on the green. So what you can see from those numbers is, at 80 miles an hour, when I was dropping my swing down, all of those clubs were coming into the ground shallower than the shots that I was hitting at full speed. And that's what we know about the game. You know, when you've got speed, you effectively can achieve more height. And when you can achieve more height, you can drop the ball softer. So at 100 miles an hour-ish, which is, let's say, where my swing speed is, I can use a 4 iron, I can use a hybrid, or I can use something like a 770 there, which is, yes, it's an iron, but it's almost like a hybrid iron. You know, it's got foam in the head, it's got weight down low, and it gives me, as you can see from those numbers, a little bit higher height and a little bit steeper drop angle. So I could use any of those clubs. And for me, if I actually wanted to use a hybrid, a standard off-the-shelf hybrid probably goes too high, gives me too much spin, drops too soft. So I'd have to look at, you know, a different style of head or maybe a different shaft to sort of counter that. But when you go down to 80 mile an hour, look at the drop angle of that 4-iron. It's like 27 degrees. That's just not playable. You know, if that ball lands on the green in any conditions close to summer, it just rolls off the back. It's not usable. Then you go into something like a 770, which gives you a little bit more help. Yes, there's a little bit more height there, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be to land on the green. So at 80 miles an hour, you kind of have to be in hybrids. There's no other real way of getting that ball to get up into the air and stop. So when you're a low swings player, hybrids are essential, in my opinion. As soon as you start to increase the speed, you get a few more options available to you. But you have to almost look at what's going to fit in your bag. So based on the information there, that hopefully helps you make a better decision. As a general rule, if you swing slower, you better be using hybrids. As you swing quicker, you can get away with irons. But my experience, this new 4-iron I've got in my bag, this 770, I love it because it's an iron, but you can see from that data, it gives me a little bit higher ball flight, slightly softer drop angle, so much more playable into the greens. If I'm going into that green on a par 5, I've got so much more confidence that I can stop it on the green. So hopefully that helps and helps you make better decisions on the clubs that go in your bag.
Right, so we've got Ryan back. You've seen him have his lesson, you're now flushing it, aren't you?
Well, we'll see in a minute.
So you've now got a chance of winning Stealth 2 driver. So the rules are carry it 1-4-3 with one shot, bag yourself a driver. Okay, what could we go with?
Got 9.
Got 9. Okay, so that is our leaderboard. So where do you want to be? That's a silly question, actually. You want to be at the top.
1, 4, 3,
Yeah, that's a silly question, isn't it? But, so I mean, you've got inside of 4 yards, and you're into the top 3. Okay, right. One shot at glory.
Go. He's been the life out of it. It's a no.
It's, well, what do you think?
Oh, mate, that's like 120 fin, that is.
Which way it lands, I'm afraid.
60. Oh, well, of course. I'm
Okay, so no win. We're going to let him have one more shot because you can do better than that. It's because we made those swing changes. So go on, one more, but unfortunately, that's the one that counts.
Oh, that is terrible.
136.
Yeah,
so closer, but who's that first one?
No, first.
All right, well, next time it could be you. If you want to get yourself involved in this, just drop me an email at chris@chrisryanGolf.com and you could be here on a lesson and potentially win a driver. So one of the biggest things that you've got to control around the greens is the loft that's on the club, okay? Because if you change the loft, so let's say we hit a shot with less loft, ball comes off lower, but it also comes off with more speed. So if you want to be a good chipper and pitcher, you've got to be really good at controlling that loft that you deliver. So what you're doing at the moment, which is pretty common, is you're setting up with a certain amount of loft. And generally, I would want the setup to reflect the shot you're trying to hit. So if you're trying to hit a low one, you set up with less loft. If you're trying to hit a high one, you set up with more loft. You're setting up with the club pretty neutral. Shaft length a little bit forward, so you're probably taking your 54 and de-lofting it to, let's say, 50, which is fine. And then you're using some wrists in the shot, which is fine. I like that. But the way you use your wrists is a little bit too much in transition. So you actually kind of lag the club back a little bit, okay, which is great for a 7-iron. Great for a driver, not great for this. So it does two things. Number one, as you lag it, it means that you've got very little time to get rid of that. And so it means that you're likely to then deliver the handle further forward. So you set a certain loft and then you deliver less loft. The other thing it does as well is it changes the distance between the club and you. So club sits on the ground, the more that we lag it, gets closer to you. So you've then got to try and get down to make that happen. So you can basically do different things to the club. Okay, you can make it go up and down. Okay, you can twist it. Okay, what you need to think about in your swing is this movement. Okay, so what we need to do when you're over the ball is you have to feel that your wrists, if you're going to use your wrists, they're going to be used in the backswing. What we don't want to do is have no wrists and then have them in transition. Okay, so you're going to feel that you, stand upright, you're going to feel that you make this move in the backswing, and then as soon as you hit transition, this move. Okay, so it's going to feel a bit more wrist going back, and then almost the point now where you feel that the first thing you do is you let the club go, and then your body just rotates and you collect it. Okay. Okay. So try and get the club to arrive at the ground before your arm hits my club. Good. Now try and get the club to hit the ground before your arm hits my club. Good. And again. Okay. It's a little bit drivey. You've definitely got this tendency to want to drive the hands a little bit. Okay. So you've got to think. Club head goes first, and the downswing, club head goes first. Better, better, good. A little far, but much higher and softer, good. Much
Stopped
better,
a lot quicker as well.
yeah,
didn't
much
it?
better interaction with the ground. That was good. So there you probably presented the loft that you set at address.
Yeah.
Okay, so whenever we hit shots, we basically want to choose the shot we want to hit. If it's a lower shot, set the loft at address and then return it there.
Yeah.
If it's a higher one, again, set it at address and return it there. Your challenge is you were setting a certain loft and then delivering something
A lot lower.
less. Yeah. And then that affects strike, but it affects speed off the face, it affects trajectory, it affects everything. That was good. Much better, much better.
Get in the hole.
Great shot. So I chose this question because this is something that so many golfers could benefit from. Getting the wrist to work better in the backswing can help a lot of golfers get the club under control a lot better. So when we take our address, the golf ball, I've obviously got no club here. Well, before we do that actually, let's look at what the wrist does. It can do this, and it can do this. And in the golf swing, it does both of those. We need to control both of those. So generally, when I set up, I'm gonna have this kind of shape in my lead wrist. We'll call that a kind of cup in the wrist. So in the backswing, we have to add wrist set, wrist cock, whatever you want to call that, which is this motion here. But we also need to take that cup and flatten it. So when I get to the top of my golf swing, up here somewhere, I've got my wrist fully set and my wrist is flat, but it doesn't start that way. So there's two movements that need to happen. Number one, we need to cock the wrists, and number two, we need to flatten the wrist out. So let me show you how you do that in a golf swing. So if we've got to do those things with the wrist, I'm a big believer in doing those relatively early. So what I'd love you to do is take your setup, and then when you get to left arm level with the ground, which is here, I want you to focus on two things. Number one, that wrist is flat. So hopefully you can see that I've taken my wrist and I've flattened it, and then from that face on, I've created this roughly 90-degree angle. So I had to take my wrist from this position and I had to flatten it and add the wrist set. And if you can just work that as a little practice, and you can even do this at home, just in front of a mirror or reflection, and just work on how you can take your wrist from its setup condition to its top of the backswing condition. Even though it's not top of the backswing here, everything's in place, I could just turn up to the top. What that's going to do is it's going to put some speed in your golf swing through the wrist, but it's also going to control the club face, which is probably the most important thing and the thing that could benefit most golfers. So when it comes to green reading, for me there's three things you can do, and probably three things that you should do. I think the best putters, the best green readers use a kind of combination of these. So the first thing, depends on who you're playing with and the situation, but just look at your playing partners. If, let's say, someone's chipping from the back of the green there, I can sort of get an idea of what this portion of the green might look like, or if someone's putting from a different angle, I can, gauge the slope of the speed of the green. So pay attention to what your playing partners are doing, that's the first thing. The second thing would be, use your feet. We should have a pretty good idea of slopes through our feet. So if I was to sort of walk along this putt here, I can certainly pick up things with my feet. I can, feel that's a little bit right to left. You may well have seen this done before. It's called aim point. This is the basics of aim point. Just standing there and just seeing whether you can feel any slope. And you'd be surprised at how much you can pick up just from your feet. You can also pick up whether it's uphill or downhill. So use your feet. And then finally, no reason why you can't just do that kind of old school, get down behind it and look at the slopes. I can build a real clear picture here of what the green does. It's high here, it's low down at the front. I know this is right to left. If I see it as right to left, I felt it as right to left, there's a real strong connection there that I've seen something, I've felt something, I'm confident that I'm seeing it correctly. And then it comes down to actually, how much brake do we apply? So then we start to visualize that putt. And I'd like to use the clock face analogy. So, visualizing a clock around the hole and where's this ball going to go in at. I think it's going to be going in almost where that shadow is. So whether that's kind of 4, 5 o'clock on that clock face. So I'm using playing partners, I'm using my feet, I'm using the visual of the green, and then I'm picking a line based on that and then picking an entry point. Once I've done all that, it's then just a case of trying to go ahead and hit that line that you've chosen. Slightly overread it, but the pace was pretty good, and you're going to give me that, aren't you?